Hi, this is Joy at Red Pine Quilt Shop. Today we are talking about a fun and quick and easy to make apron. They make great gifts, they're fun to make for yourself, and you use a tea towel to make the base for the apron. So super quick, super easy. You can whip one of these up in about an hour. So here is my tea towel apron. I have a nice big pocket on the front, and I left the lines that I sewed on marked on my pocket so that you could see them, because obviously I did it with black thread and I wanted you to be able to see where the pockets were. So I'll remove those lines here later. But I made a skinny pocket on the one side, a big pocket in the middle, and a kind of a cell phone size pocket on the one side. So when you put that big pocket on, you can decide how you want to divide it up. It has a strap that goes around your neck, runs through casing on the sides, and it ties then in the back. So it starts around my neck, runs down, and then I've got a little tie in the back. So super quick and easy way to make an apron. So I'm going to cover some tips and tricks for making this, and we'll go ahead and go back to the counter here now that you've had a look at what we're working on, and we will talk about this project. So this project uses the tea towel apron pattern from Karen Montgomery of the Quilt Company, and it is one of her cardstock patterns. It's a nice 8.5 by 11 cardstock two-sided sheet. Very easy pattern to follow. And to make this, you need to have a tea towel and a 1/2 yard of coordinating fabric. So super easy as far as what you need to pull together to make one of these aprons. So we're going to start by talking a little bit about your apron and getting your apron prepped. So the aprons all have a tag and a little hanging loop on them, and I opted to leave that at the bottom. I've trimmed the tag out already. You can see that little white where I trimmed it out. I will trim this hanging tab out as well, but I left it at the bottom because I didn't want to have it any place in getting into the folds on the top. Depending on the placement of that, you could possibly put it at the top and it might get cut completely off, but I decided it was safer to leave it at the bottom and just trim it out. So that is where I left my tag and my hanging loop. Now the pattern gives you great directions. There's a wonderful detail diagram in the pattern that tells you how wide to make the top, where to mark your sides, and at that point in time you have your tea towel marked up, and you are just going and marking lines between the tick marks that you measured and made. So no special tools, you're just measuring with a ruler and marking, and then drawing lines between the marks. So the one thing that you want to get is a really nice crease on the side of that casing, so it looks nice and it looks finished. And the best way to do that is to use the Clover hot ruler. That will give you a nice edge. So I'm going to come over here to my ironing board and show you how to use the Clover hot ruler. So to use the Clover hot ruler, what I would do is to simply slide the ruler right up to where my line is marked, and I can press right on this ruler. You can use steam. It is fine to use steam. And I will press a section, and then I can simply slide my ruler down and continue to find that line and go ahead and press the next section. And you will get a nice crisp edge. And now that I've got that one pressed, I can flip it back and I can slide that ruler in and do the same thing with the second line, because we're making a casing here, so it's got a finished edge, and I can go ahead and press, and then I will have to slide down one more time to finish pressing. So my ruler takes about 2 ruler lengths to finish this. And I can go ahead and press. But the nice thing is when you're pressing up against the edge of the hot ruler, you get a super nice straight flat edge. It would be hard to get that nice crisp creased edge if you were just folding it by hand. You wouldn't get that nice crisp creased edge like you can get when you're pressing up against the edge of the hot ruler. So that's a perfect way to get nice edges. Now when you are sewing something like this, one thing you want to make sure that you remember to do is to backstitch. So there'll be some pressure on these seams, so you want to make sure that when you're sewing that casing down, I started probably between 1/4 inch and 1 inch in. I backstitched up to the edge of the towel, and then I sewed down, and I backstitched again 4 or 5 stitches at least on the ends of pretty much all of the seams in here. Same thing with the seams on your pocket. When you sew the pocket on, you're going to have pressure on those points. Make sure that you're backstitching there, and your pocket division seams. Backstitch at the ends of all of those. I would say 4 or 5 stitches at least. So make sure you do that so nothing starts to come apart just under normal wear and use of your tea towel apron. So do remember that when you're stitching. So after you have your towel pressed and ready to go, then you want to fix your pocket. So your pockets are made out of 2 layers of fabric. And you will cut the 2 layers of fabric, you'll sew them right sides together, and you're going to leave yourself a little opening to turn it. Now when you are doing your pocket, it recommends a curved corner, and there's a couple of tools you can use to cut that curved corner. One tool that I have in my tool arsenal is the boxed bag template from Carolina Moore. But I felt like that was just a little bit too much of a curve, so I kept hunting, and I pulled out another favorite tool of mine, which is the Creative Grids multi-size curved corner cutter from Lynn Edwards. And the nice thing about this tool is it has a square corner and a 1.5 inch radius curve, a 2 inch radius curve, and a 3 inch radius curve. So you have some choices. So when I was getting ready to cut this, I was laying it down and looking at it going, what curve do I like? How much of a curve do I want? Is that too much? Is that too little? I settled on the 2 inch. That was what I liked the best, the looks of. And I'm just going to show you with some scrap fabric how to use that to cut. So you would want to have a square corner that you're starting with, and then you can lay the ruler down. You'll match up the edges. And I like to go to a small rotary cutter when I'm working with a curve like this. So I switched to my 28mm cutter from my 45 that I normally use. And then I can go right around that curve, and there I end up with a beautiful, nice, consistent curve. And it's super handy with that tool, and then you have options to decide how big a curve you want to make. So that is how I did my curves on my corner. I stitched around it. I left an opening to turn. And now before I turn it, I need to do a couple things. The one thing that you need to do is you need to clip your corners. Now you can clip your corners with a scissors, but that's fairly time consuming to clip that curve. So I like to go to my pinking shears because it's super fast and easy to clip that curve. And I've already pinked that one, but I'll go ahead and cut the other side. So I try to stay 1/8 inch away from my stitches with the closest part of the pinking cut. So I still have 1/8 inch there. And all I have to do is just cut the curved part. Don't have to do the whole pocket, just have to do the curved part. And now I've essentially very quickly clipped that curve. The other thing that it is a good idea to do is to take just a tiny bit off those square corners. and they'll turn out a little nicer for you. And the last thing that I like to do before I turn this is I like to go to that area where my opening is, and there's my opening to turn, and I like to press that seam. So I flipped it back and I flipped it back, and I actually pressed that with my iron. I didn't press the whole thing, I just pressed that area. So just that area where the opening is, because it's easier to press it and get a nice crisp flat edge on that. Now you can even use your hot ruler for it if you want. Then it will be to do that after you've turned it. So I like to pre-press that before I turn my pocket. Then I'm ready to turn my pocket, and I will flip it through that opening. And at this point, I love to get out my Clover point-to-point turner. It is my favorite point turning tool. And I will get that out because I can use it for the square corners and I can use it for the rounded corners. So I would take the pointed end and I would use that to work out my square corners that are at the top of the pocket. But then I'm going to flip the tool and I'm going to use that rounded heel to come through those curved bottom corners and get those pushed out. And the one thing that you always want to remember to do when you're turning something like this, we tend to work on our corners and forget to push out the side. And sometimes you'll actually end up with something where you can see an obvious bow where the corners are out and the side curves in. So remember to open that side seam up too. And it works great with the heel of that tool to just sweep through and open that side seam up, so that you have a nice flat side seam as you're prepping your pocket. And then your pocket gets top stitched down onto the apron, and you can decide how you want to divvy your pocket up. You can make one big pocket, you can make a couple small pockets, totally up to you. You decide where you want to put those seams. So after you've prepared your pocket, the next thing that you need to do is to put your strap together. Pattern gives you great directions on how to make the strap. The one thing that I would recommend that you do is after you have your strap put together, do a little checking on the size. You know, go ahead and drape it around your neck, kind of run it down where the strap would be. Act like you were going to imagine you were going to tie it behind your back, and decide if you're good with the strap length. The strap that the pattern has you make is plenty long. You may want to shorten it a little bit if you're a smaller person. So the strap is going to start out as strips of fabric. You're going to sew them together with a 45-degree angle seam. I love to use my quick trim ruler to cut those 45-degree angles, so my dog ears are trimmed off when I go to piece the strips together, and you're going to press them open. Now when you sew the seam, you want to make sure that you remember to sew it with the fabric wrong sides together. So you want to flip it and go wrong sides together. Now I opted to go ahead and cut a little angle on my strap so that it ended up with a little bit of an angle at the end instead of a blunt end. Just thought it would look a little nicer. So as with everything on the apron, you want to make sure that you're always back stitching because these are seams that are going to have a little strain on them. They're going to have a little pressure put on them, especially a lot of the ones on the apron around the pocket and around the casing. So when you sew this, you want to always make sure that you back stitch. So even doing the strap, I started about 1/4 of an inch in, I back stitched to the edge, and then I came back. So I started about 1/4 of an inch in, back stitched to the edge, sort of with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and then I came back and I went down the strap. Now the pattern will have you do the strap in 2 sections. So I have 1/2 of it that's not sewn yet because I wanted you guys to see what it looked like, and the other half I have and it is sewn. And the reason you do that is so that you don't have such a long tube to turn, and then you can hide your opening where you turned it in the middle, and it's easy to slip stitch that opening closed later. So I would recommend when you go to sew that you pop a wonder clip or something at that middle point, because when you start sewing down a seam like this, it's so easy to just keep going, and all of a sudden you're at the other end and you're like, oh shoot, I meant to stop. So pop a wonder clip or something in the middle so you know where you want to stop. When I sew the other side, I'm going to start at this end and sew towards the middle. Here I started at this end and sewed towards the middle. That's the best direction to go, and you want to leave yourself probably at least about a 4-inch opening so you have a little room to work. So when you have a big long tube like this, turning it can be a little tricky, but if you have a tube turner, it is super easy. So a tube turner is a device like this. It has a hollow tube and it has a pushing stick, and the tube turners that we sell is the set from Dritz, and you actually get 3 sizes in this set. So you have 3 size tubes and turners. This one actually has a metal pusher because it's the narrow one, and then you have the biggest one. So for this project we're going to use the biggest one. I'm going to go to that middle point where my opening is and slide my tube turner inside the tube, and I'm just going to keep working it all the way down to the end of my tube. And my tube looks a little ravelly because I've done this a couple times. I've demoed this a few times and he's been turned and unturned. Tube turners also work to unturn it as well. So now I am down to the end with my tube. I like to push with the blunt end of the stick. There is a pointed end. I like to push with the blunt end. I just feel like it's safer. So I will take and insert that inside the tube, and I'm pushing the fabric inside the tube now. So the fabric is coming around the outside and it's going into the inside, and when it goes into the inside, it's turning to the other direction. So I will go ahead and push it through. Now I've actually made it to the end of my tube and I have to start to work. I find it works best just to kind of put it like this, and I'll slide a bunch of fabric up onto the tube turner, hang on to my stick there on the other end, and then work the fabric back. And then I'll do another section and just keep working it back as I go, and kind of try to keep the wrinkles out of it, and just keep working your way along the tube turning stick inside. You'll end up kind of doing it in sections, and here I am coming out on the other side. So I will go ahead and push till I can see my tube turner there, and continue to work this along. And it is a long tube. They're, like I said, a little trickier when you have a big long tube like this. They're going to get a little bunched up, and we'll keep pulling it out. I'll keep having to just kind of unrumple it here so that it smooths out and it pulls through smoothly. And I'm just about there. So now I have my tube out. I can use the stick that's inside to actually go ahead and push this out if I want to, but because I made that angled end, I'm going to actually drop my stick out, and it will work great to put back in, but I'm going to flip it so I have the pointed end. So I'll flip it around so I don't have the blunt end, I have the pointed end, and I will pop it back down that tube, and then I can use it to push out that angled end that I decided to make on my strap. And so I can work on that a little bit with the stick, and now I have my nice angled end, and all I have to do is to take this over and do a little work to press it, and I will have a nice strap for my apron. So go ahead and pull my stick back out of there. And the last thing that you have to do after you turn both ends of your tube, you will want to go ahead and slip stitch that little opening in the middle closed. So you will have a little opening there to slip stitch. But once you have that pressed, you're ready to go ahead and put it into your apron. So I'm going to go ahead and take my apron off so that I can show you what it looks like to put it into the casing. So your strap is going to go around your neck, and then it's going to go into the casing on both sides, and then there are your ties to tie around your waist. I'm going to pull this one out because I want to show you a super easy way to put that into the casing. We love the Clover Easy Clip and Glide bodkin. This is just the best bodkin in the world. I love it, and it holds really good. So there's actually a latch on this. I'll put it, is it better on the white? There's actually a latch, so you can unlatch this, and then this opens up, and you put your fabric into there, and then you close it. So we'll grab this strip of fabric. So there's my strap. I can tuck it in, and then I'll close the latch. And now I have it securely held by the bodkin. And the thing I love about this bodkin is it doesn't come loose. It's great for putting elastic into the waistband of things. So if you have elastic, if you do some clothes sewing, I'm going to have to flip this around so I can get my hands in the right position. If you do some clothes sewing and you have elastic you need to pull through waistbands, it's great for pulling drawstrings into tote bags. And with that wonderful latching system, it never lets loose when you're almost to the end, which is usually what always happens to me when I try to do it with a safety pin. I'll be almost to the end, and my safety pin will come open, and then I have to back it all the way out and start over. And that never happens with the Clip and Glide bodkin. So now I have my strap in there, and my apron is done, and I am ready to wear it and use it or gift it, whatever I might choose to do. So this is a wonderful pattern. We stock it at our shop. You can find the pattern for the apron, for the tea towel apron, and you can find all of the tools that I showed and a great range of tea towels on our website at redpinequiltshop.com. Thanks for joining us.